Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 171. I am super motivated to record this right now because, one, I haven't recorded it in a bit. I didn't do a podcast for like 2 weeks because I was trying to pump out that Mega Man video before the end of the year, and also I'm lazy. I could probably just record in bed if I really wanted to. But I'm too lazy for that. Why do you even listen to me? I don't know. Not many people do. I'm motivated because of what just happened to me right now, and it ties into the holiday season. So I hope everybody had a great Christmas, a great New Year's. Personally, my birthday falls on New Year's, so it's a very festive time for me. All of my gifts are kind of laser focused. Focus fired into this one 5-6 day period around from the 25th to like the 1st or 2nd, you know? So for Christmas, my mom, she got me a couple things. One of them was this really neat kneeling chair. I'd implore you to check them out. Personally, I've had problems with like the chair that I've used for forever. I always it's like a regular office chair, and I lean forward when I edit, and my back gets super pinched up because I go for really long periods of time. And my mom got me this new funky chair to kind of help with that. And I don't want to go into like all the detail to describe it, but it's essentially imagine like a rocking chair, but it has a little like footstool type thing on the front that bends in. It's like tilted at an incline, and you kneel on it, and you kind of disperse where all the pressure you're putting is on across like your legs and your knees and stuff, and not so much on your back. And gonna be honest, this thing works. The other thing that she got me was a little product. Actually, I'm gonna go grab it. I set it down earlier. She got me this thing. It's called an LED water wave projection lamp. This is like it's essentially it's a lamp with an LED light on the front that changes to a bunch of different colors. And it has this little plastic dish with sort of like a deformed surface that's meant to kind of look like ripples of water. And the idea is that it projects through this disc and projects like a multicolored kind of cool aesthetic water pattern onto your wall or something like that. And she said, this will be really cool for your videos. And I said, oh, okay, well, that's kind of neat. So I got home. I figured, you know what? Let me open this up and just check it out for a second. So there's a couple pieces inside. The main thing is the kind of central, there's like a stand and like a pole to put it on. But the main pieces are what would you call it? Like the main chassis of the thing. It's where the actual projector light thing, which is like a chunk of a cylindrical plastic thing that has this little, under where the light is or like above it, it's got this like plastic nub that comes out, this knobbed nub that like flares at the end, right? Or it's got like a flat kind of plastic plate at the end of it. And if you look at the product image on the box, the dish, the little plastic circle, clearly fits behind. It's got a hole in the middle, and it fits behind this little knob. So I'm like, okay, so it probably unscrews some way. Because I'm looking at it, and so I'm supposed to get this thing around the knob somehow, or behind it, right? So I take the knob, and I'm like, okay, well, it seems like it's kind of locked in place. I tried twisting it. I tried twisting it the other way. No avail, nothing. It doesn't screw off that way from what I can tell. I try pushing it. I try pulling it. I try pushing and twisting both ways. I try pulling and twisting both ways. Nothing works. And I'm doing this for a couple minutes, retrying things like, did I really? Because, you don't want to push too hard, or you don't want to twist you don't want to force it too much because you don't want to break it, right? So, but I'm putting just even more force than I would usually be comfortable with on this thing, and it's still not coming off. And the end doesn't detach. It's like solid. It's like solidly, it's a part of the plastic mold. Nothing about it comes off. There's only so many ways that you can interact with this thing. There's no buttons on it. There's no places to unscrew something. Well, there are screws, but it's just like the front and back plates. And I actually tried unscrewing the front plate where this nub is, and it actually doesn't even come off all the way because the nub stops it. So I'm a little bit at a loss. There's only so many ways to interact with this thing to try and fit this little plastic dish, the main point of the product, onto this chassis, this projector. So I look at the box again. I double check, like, that is what it looks like, right? And yeah, it is. But then I see on the box, it says one of the things included in the box, a manual. And I think, oh geez, did I just miss that when I pulled it out? I look inside, no manual. No manual to speak of. So I'm like, okay. Now, she bought this from Marshall's. My mom got this from Marshall's. As what I kind of figured out, and what I now know, is that Brookstone does not have any physical. Oh, did I mention this? This is a product from Brookstone, which is a name brand. This is a name brand, which is why a lot of this was a little bit surprising to me, because I've seen them. I mean, they used to have stores in malls, right? They would sell little electronic stuff and, massagers and chairs and tech chairs and all that, and little gadgets and doodads like this. And to me, that implied a certain level of legitimacy, which I am about to learn is completely unfounded. So they went bankrupt, and they only do online orders, or they sell to different retailers, right? They don't have their own discrete stores anymore. So I'm like, okay, Brookstone, well, that's a name brand. I know them. Let me check their website to see if they have manuals online and in PDF form. I look it up. They have a manuals page on their website. I click on it. It's an unfinished web page. It's just a header that says manuals with nothing underneath it. I'm like, I take the URL, I put it into the Wayback Machine. And the Wayback Machine, the most recent archive of that page, is from 6 months ago in around June of 2024. So I click on that, I look at it. It's a completely functional website, or web page, with a lookup. It's got a list of all of their products, and there's a search bar where you can just type in a name, you can type in a product code. It's all there. Does not have this lamp. I'm like, okay. I go to the world's largest database of barcodes and serial numbers. I look it up. I type in directly. I directly type in the barcode on the bottom of the box. Nothing. Okay. At this point, I am getting really confused, and I realize, you know what? Let me look up this, reviews for this thing, and let me find the same product, and let me see if anyone else has this problem, or anyone else has run into this. So I search up the name of the item, and it does not come up. Brookstone sells a similar type of water wave projection lamp, but the other one they sell is like this long rectangular plastic thing that has a light underneath that shines through and illuminates the wall or what. It's like a long strip kind of thing, not like a desk lamp type thing that this one is that I have in my hands that I'm looking at on my desk. And I'm looking on their website. All I can find is the other one. It's the wrong water lamp, right? I'm like, that's weird. So I look, I decided to do a general Google search. I go on Amazon. Can't find it. I scroll through dozens and dozens. I scroll through pages and pages of results. Cannot find anything resembling this product, which, by the way, has the Brookstone name on it. I'm like, okay, I look on eBay. Can't find anyone reselling it. I look on Temu. To find if there's even an off-brand version of this. Can't find it. I cannot find anything resembling this lamp. I can't find this thing. I am staring at a total enigma. There is no proof of this product's existence other than the fact that I am looking at it right now. I'm holding it in my hands. So I'm at a loss. I have no idea. At this point, I think most people would have been just frustrated, but I was intrigued. What she really gave me was the gift of a mystery. So today, I finally I was like, okay, I have to call their customer support. I finally have to get around to it. It's been like a week or something, or more than that, actually. It's been like 2 weeks. So I have to actually get around to calling their customer support. I Google their customer support number. Now, if you Google Brookstone customer support, I'm going to do it right now. Brookstone customer support. The first thing that comes up, it comes up on the main Google like body result. It comes up on the little sidebar for customer service. And it's from brookstone.com/pages/policies. It is the number 1-800-846-3000. I typed that into my phone. Exactly. I clicked on it directly from my phone. So this is the number on the site. The phone rings for a second, and then I get an automated voice that says, "We have a special offer for seniors 50 and up." And immediately I'm like, what? And it says, if you are over 50, press 1. If you're under 50, press 2. And I was like, let me press 2. Is my neighbor going to start chainsawing shit right now? I'm going to get up real quick. I'm going to close my windows. God forbid I get a little fresh air while I'm trying to record. I pressed 2 out of curiosity because I am under 50. I'm a freshly minted 23-year-old, as a matter of fact, as of the 1st of this year. So I pressed the 2, and next I get a number that says, "Hi, my name's Jennifer. Do you are you interested in a medical device, a special medical device offer?" And then it pauses. And I say like, "No, no." She just says, "I'm Jennifer. How can I help you?" And then I said, "Yeah, hi. I'm trying to get some help with the product that I got." And then she launches into a fast-paced sell on a medical device. And I'm like, whoa, wait, no. Oh, wait, I've heard this before. You know where I've heard this? I've heard this when I did the video on fucking Urban Yeti, because there was a phone number that you could call on the back of the box. And it was so old, it had been redirected to some scam. And it was the exact same thing. It was, you call them, they ask you if you're over 50. If you say you're under 50, then they just hang up. If you're over 50, they put you into like an automated recording to just hard sell you on a medical device, right? Like a life alert type thing. And I've heard this before, and I'm like, no, I must have. So I hang up. I double check that it's the right number. It is. I call again, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to press 2 again. Same Jennifer comes up When she asks me for if she can help me with anything, I don't say anything. I stay silent. 5 seconds pass, and then she launches into the tirade. And I was like, oh shit. And I just let it go. I let it go for as long as possible until she just redirected me to a quote unquote medical device expert. And it was someone else who obviously immediately picked up the phone after like 3 rings of the transfer. And then they start going into like a whole tirade again, trying to hard sell me on a medical device. And I am like, I can't believe this. Eventually they asked me another thing, like they asked me some other question that I think you're actually supposed to verbally confirm. I don't know why it was set up differently, but I didn't say anything, and they just hung up on me. No, they said, we'll transfer you to someone else, and then hung up. Hilarious. So I'm like, what the fuck? So when I'm looking at Brookstone customer support, the first big number is this 846-3000 number, right? If you scroll down, the first link result on brookstone.com/pages/contact us, not /policies, it lists a different number. It lists 1-800-345-6282. And then a third number. If you have a question or concern about an order placed on brookstone.com, contact this email address or 888-454-9752. I decide to go with the warranty thing didn't. It seemed like it redirected to. It says like the redirected to a different service or whatever they do for that kind of shit. I look up. So I decide to call the 888 number and not the 800 number. Mind you, this is Pages Contact Us. The one before was Pages Policies. I contact the 888 number. A real woman picks up. I think she's doing it from home because I can hear shit in the background. Like I can hear stuff happening. And I asked her if you can help. Can you help me with this product? She says, no, I'm not. We have a lot of different manufacturers that we license from. I wouldn't know how to do it. You should refer to the manual. I said, that's the problem. It says there's a manual. There's no manual. And essentially all of the advice that she gave me, that she could give me, was you should take it back to where it was bought. And I said, okay. Because I just want to know, because you guys had a manual page of manuals on your website that is completely blank. And she said that they went bankrupt in 2018, which was actually 4 years after their previous bankruptcy in 2014. And at some point, due to the bankruptcy, they removed their, because their relationship with their manufacturers became different. Like they didn't have access to that information anymore. So they just couldn't list manuals for products they sold on their own website. But at least they could have as recently as June. So fine. Okay. You guys took it off. This thing was clearly manufactured after that point. So I'm like, okay, hey, one more thing. Did you guys know that there's a different page on your website that leads to a customer support number that says customer service, and it's the first result on Google, and it leads to a medical device scam that's like intentionally set up to confuse elderly people? I want to be clear. I'm not trying to get on this woman's ass for this. She's just a customer support person, right? I just want to be like, hey, do your boss, because it's a recorded line, do your bosses know that you guys have the first result is a medical device scam that's on your website? And she says, and this is kind of where she lost me. I don't know if this is what she's been told or not. Well, she must have been told this, but I don't know if this is just the party line that she has to tell. She says, that's a fake website. That's a scam website. that comes up on Google. And I said, no. Like, first of all, okay, so I know Google ads are like atrocious, right? And they will have name brands in them, and then you will click on them and they will go to a completely different URL. And it's a misleading scam. That's on a sponsored thing. I've got ad block. This is not a sponsored thing. This is a Google auto-generated things. But okay, even that's fallible, right? And I was a bit confused because she seemed very solemn in assuring me that this was a fake website, that this was a fake version of the website that scammers had used. And I said, wow, that seems like something that your company would want to get on, because there is an identical duplicate Brookstone website that looks exactly like the same thing, like the Brookstone website, and is scamming people, and it is the first result on Google. Now you could say, well, Tygan, you should have been a little more. What the fuck is my grandmother? Okay, I don't know. She made a weird sound. She laughing? Okay. You should have been more observant. Which, by the way, I think having any scam, you shouldn't put that on me. First of all, I don't think you should put that on the victim of the scam. But you should have been a little more street smart, Tygan. You're a techie kind of guy. You should have noticed that it was obviously a fake URL. Because, I mean, whenever one of these things happens, it's like a slightly off URL, you know. It's the website with a letter changed or something that looks identical. So I hung up. I said, thank you for your time. And I double checked because I'm like, how could they get it so close? And I look, and it's the same URL. I pulled up the policies page, the one that led to the scam number, and I pulled up the official customer support number that I got an actual representative from. And I literally just clicked back and forth, and with my eyes visually confirmed that the URLs were identical. They were simply different, what are they called? Subpages? Slash so-and-so slash. What is that called? What the hell is that called? It's just like, hang on. Yeah, there's a graph for this. Subdirectory. It's the same domain. Brookstone.com. Brookstone.com. /pages. /pages. /policies. /contact us. And I was doing mad research on this a second ago because I was like, can two websites have the same URL? Identical URL. Same, but lead to different, there's no like, they're both HTTPS. They are identical websites until the very last subdirectory. Absolutely insane. Can that happen? And everything I was looking up was saying no. Every time someone does a scam like this, it's a website that looks very close but is a little bit off in terms of its URL. Like you can't lie about that. You can't lie about literally the information that your computer is getting and displaying. It's not a spoof. I go to if you're on the scam website and you click on the homepage, it is the Brookstone.com website. It says Brookstone.com. It's the same one from the official site. So unless there is some way that a scammer can register specifically a subdirectory of a domain, of a root domain, and everything else redirects to the root domain, I have no idea how they expect me to believe that this is fake, that this is not them. What the actual fuck? Are you kidding me? This is the first result that comes up on Google. It's the first one. And she said, yeah, we've heard about that. You've heard about this? What? Genuinely, I have to take a drink. Genuinely, what the fuck? No, I do not fucking accept the idea that is true. There is in no uncertain terms in my mind. The Brookstone website, one of its pages is just a fucking scam that's meant to lure in elderly people, and not like it's kind of a shady bit. It is a straight up textbook scam meant to exploit elderly people who don't know about this shit and are vulnerable to, like, oh, maybe I do need a life alert in case something happens to me, preying upon their feelings of vulnerability. They have fake pauses in the fucking automated, in the pre-recorded script that are meant for someone to reply to make it feel like they're talking to a real human being. This is a scumbag fucking, like, Indian call center scam. What are we doing here? This is going up as a clip because I want the world to know. Yeah, I would never buy anything from Brookstone. Holy shit. This has been such a ridiculous experience. Thankfully, it wasn't my money, It was my mom's money. And it was only like, $15? $17. Awesome. So $17 on what is, I don't know if that thing is a scam. I did ask her at the end of the call. The real lady, not the robo lady. How this would have happened if it was from a secondary retailer. And she said that sometimes there are returns, sometimes it's because they buy them like in bulk or as surplus, and that's how they come in. But it would be up to the retailer. And at this point, I don't know if that is a scam. There is certainly a lack of quality assurance going on, a severe lack. If something something listed on the box doesn't come in the box, I think that's a bit of a problem. But absolutely something with the central Brookstone company is super fishy. Genuinely, what the hell? It was crazy discovering this in real time. I literally told her, like, I think your company is like evil. I think the company you work for is evil. Crazy. Jesus Christ. That's almost like I want to fucking alert somebody. Criminy. Okay, well, thankfully, most of the rest of this is going to be positive. I don't know how positive this next one is going to be because we're in the comment review. I'm going to make a mark because I talked for so long about that. Comment review. So this week's comment, this week's question comes to us from Gus. Gus asks, "Hey T, I know this comes out of nowhere, but are you aware of the movement Stop Killing Games? Just to put it into context, this movement began to gain strength after Ubisoft, has there ever been a consensus on that? Decided to shut down their game The Crew, not just the game's online services, but the digital license itself. The game literally disappeared from people's libraries, making it impossible to even download the files. If possible, I would like to know your opinion on video game preservation." Oh boy, have you ever asked the person for that? As someone who loves video games, I hope this kind of act doesn't become a trend. So yes, I have heard of Stop Killing Games. This one was started by, let me get his name right. I want to say this was Ross from Accursed Farms. So essentially, if you aren't familiar with the background to this, Ubisoft released a game years ago at this point called The Crew. It was like a multiplayer, big open world car driving game from what I got from it, like car driving and racing game. I personally, it wasn't a big thing among the circles I pay attention to. But apparently it did have a dedicated audience of people who really liked it. Okay, fair enough. Ubisoft decided to shut down The Crew, and as with any of these things, that means that it is completely, essentially being deleted. It's deleted. You will not be able to play it. You won't be able to access anything about it. the game is just gone. And this has been a sort of brutal reality of these live service games. And so, now there are many, many games that this movement or initiative, as they've called it, could have centered around. I don't know if there was any particular reason for it being The Crew. Could have just been that it's Ubisoft. So essentially the premise of Stop Killing Games is something that I totally agree with. I am an incredibly pro preservation person. A lot of my channel wouldn't exist without preservation. I consider things like piracy and emulation to be forms of preservation. I mean, a lot of my channel would not be possible. I wouldn't be able to play a lot of the games that I talk about because they're just impossible or extremely cost prohibitive to get. I'm also, I think that it's important because it allows people in the future to be able to access these things more easily when business interests and capital interests don't support that. I find that in most cases, these kinds of corporate and capitalist interests don't align with what is best for society. And in the case of art, that often means, well, it's not profitable anymore, so just fucking get rid of it. It's more expensive to keep up. And I think that's bullshit, and you should be able to have a copy of that somewhere for someone to experience. So, I mean, it's one story for offline games, right? That's one story, right? With online games, things get a little more complicated. Because with an offline game, it's just, and this has happened before, where they just get deleted. I mean, there's so many games. There's some awful figure that's like 80% of games ever made are not legally purchasable. Or at least not in the US. And if they're not legally purchasable in the US, I can't imagine they're buyable in many other places. So that has happened, right? Where a game just gets taken off, it gets delisted from a storefront, and then, well, what are you going to do about it besides pirate it? With online games and live services, it's more complicated because these games necessarily, it's like it's a legal versus what feels ethically right kind of situation. Because legally, technically, when you download a game, and a live service game, you're only downloading so much of it, as opposed to having the physical disc, or literally downloading a game's full files and like executable onto your computer or something like that. You're downloading a certain amount of the game's files, usually graphical, visual things, to get it to run. But most of the game is actually being hosted on a central server that you are connecting to. And so there's no, when you buy, here's another thing. When you buy any piece of entertainment, right? You're not technically buying it. This is the same for music and movies and all of that. When you buy a DVD of a movie, right? You're not buying the movie. That's like a simple way of putting it. You are buying a license to view it. And that's different because, well, when you say buying a movie, what does that mean? Are you buying the rights to the film? Like, you don't own the copyright to it suddenly. You don't own pieces of the copyright suddenly. Like, you don't own a single character. You don't own certain trademarked brands. There's a lot of things that when you say you're buying a film, you're not actually buying. All you're really buying is... Ooh, my neck. All you're really buying is a license to view it. Now, with physical media, people, it doesn't really matter that much because, like, you own it, you know? Like, when is it, you know, Paramount is not going to remotely detonate your DVD, right? Wasn't there that one self-destructing disc concept that never took off? Yeah, thank God that didn't happen. Um, like, so it's never been like a problem for people who buy movies. And then when it comes to streaming, the business model has never been that you're buying the movie in almost all cases. It's like you're purchasing a subscription to a service, which is, I think a lot of people think of it as like, oh, well, it's kind of like I'm paying for a channel on TV. And so if I stop paying for the service, or the service stops supporting the show or the movie that I want to watch, that's just kind of part of it. And people still don't like that, but at least, you know, it's not exactly this. I'm not going to say it's necessarily that much better, but in terms of the emotions it causes in people, it feels less like something was stolen from you. It's just like, oh, fuck, it's not hearing. God damn it. But then you get to games. Multiplayer online game, or just online games that you have to purchase for, like, oftentimes a full price, or even just free to play. I think it matters more when you're paying for it to a lot of people, or if you've invested microtransactions into it. That's another thing. So this is applicable to a lot of them in that case. It's when I spend $60 on a game, I play it for a few years, and then, you know, in 10 years, I won't be able to play it because everything about it has been taken offline. This is a controversial thing. It doesn't get brought up all the time, right? It often doesn't get brought up because successful games generally don't get taken away. They generally don't get taken offline. It tends to be when something is kind of dwindling down, or it's sort of dying, or it's on its last legs, or it's like Concord, and no one cares about it. No one really cares about it enough that when it's taken offline, many people won't even notice. There are some examples. You know, I remember reading an old Game Informer article back in the day about the shutdown of Star Wars Galaxies in 2011, I think. That was very memorable to me, and that was kind of my personal introduction to that concept. So usually there's just not a big audience. This whole kind of stop killing games thing is sort of it's like people only care several years removed when someone gets interested in playing it again, and oh, it's offline. So this is kind of trying to bring attention to it now. So there's a legal question that I wonder, and it might differ based on the game, which is when you buy, for instance, The Crew, what are you technically purchasing? And the answer is, in most of these cases, actually, that you are purchasing you're not purchasing the right to play the game in the same way that you would when you buy a single player game. You're purchasing the right to access the game's content on its servers. And that's different. Now, I kind of see a little bit of a both sides argument, just to entertain where both things are, the reasoning, the best faith interpretation of, like, say, the publisher's side, which is you can't support one thing forever. And I would say, okay, that makes some amount of sense to me, that you don't want to pay for servers for everything forever in perpetuity, especially if you're Ubisoft and you have 10 billion live service games. Fine. My response to that would be, and I don't know, so I'm on the website right now. The petition reads, official government petitions have been, and this is mostly in the, this is mostly in the EU and the UK. There's one in Canada, Australia. Official government petitions have been introduced to prohibit the practice of intentionally rendering commercial video games inoperable when support ends. Now that means a lot of things, and they have a helpful FAQ. So, for instance, aren't games licensed and not sold to customers? Exactly what I said. The short answer is that this is a large legal gray area depending on the country. In the United States, this is generally the case. In other countries, the law is not clear at all, since license agreements cannot override national laws. Those laws often consider video games as goods, which may have many consumer protections that apply to them. So despite what the license agreement may say, in some countries, you are indeed sold your copy of the game license. Some terms still apply, however. For example, you are typically only sold your individual copy of the game license for personal use, not the intellectual property rights of the video game itself, like I said. So, okay. So I think that's a pretty good point, that this is, it varies by country. And you could probably come up with a system for where you wouldn't run into a problem with that. So, aren't you asking for companies to support games forever? Isn't that unrealistic? They said, no, we are not asking that at all. We are in favor of publishers ending support for a game whenever they choose. What we are asking for is that they implement an end-of-life plan to modify or patch the game so that it can run on customer systems with no further support from the company being necessary. We agree it is unrealistic to expect companies to support games indefinitely and do not advocate for that in any way. So, the most positive outcome for something like this, and I think it's something that other people have argued before, is that I don't know what an end-of-life thing looks like, or how specific they want to get into it. My idea, and this isn't original, is if you are running a server-based game, to essentially release tools, have like some final patch, and when you shut the servers down, before you do that, release tools to host your own servers, right? To host community runs, or at least release tools to do so. It's also, you could potentially, if you want to end server support, and you say that we are killing the game for good, I think there's an argument that you could release these games into the public domain. Hey, how about that? How about that? That might be a little extreme to some people, but if you're not making money on it, you can at least release that game as, let's say, I don't know, abandonware or something like that, to rescind your ownership of it, or maybe make it in public domain. You wouldn't be able to make money off of it, theoretically. Maybe, I don't know, actually. Maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. It depends. That if they want to hold on to the license, they could release it and say that you can do, but you can't make money off of it if you want to support your own servers. Question: wouldn't what you're asking ban online-only games? They say not at all. In fact, nothing we are seeking would interfere with any business activity whatsoever while the game was being actively supported. The regulations we are seeking would apply only when companies decide to end support for games. At that time, they would need to be converted to have either offline or private hosting modes, like I just said. Until then, companies should continue running games any way they see fit. So most parts of this I generally agree with, as someone who is pro-preservation. I would love it if preservation efforts did not rely on piracy for this entire medium, essentially, that so much of it is carried on the back of piracy, and that maybe there could be some official embracing of preservation. But if you have to institute a law that demands that a company provide some kind of end of life, that's the thing, is like, I am perfectly fine with a company being able to run the game and have everything be on their private servers while they are actively running and supporting the game. But the moment they decide to kill it, I think that in some way that there should be a preservation aspect to it. Some kind of method of releasing the game. So hey, here's a good example of that. Completely publisher driven with no outside pressure. Mega Man X Dive. That was the Mega Man kind of crossover gacha game. I played a bit of it when it came out. It wasn't really my thing, but it had like some cool characters and stuff like that. when that game was taken offline, because I don't know if it did especially well, Capcom released a Mega Man X Dive offline version, which you can still find. It's on Steam. You could just buy the whole game as a single player experience because the online components were not in, it was designed in a way where the online components could be removed. Excuse me. So let me look at like Mega Man X Dive. Yeah, offline for $30 is a little steep. Although it does have a demo. And so apparently it still has like kind of like rolling for, it still does have, I don't know if it has gacha, but it replaced it with like grind mechanics for characters and stuff. So it is all of the content that was offered in the game, except for I think they did a couple collaboration things that for licensing reasons they didn't include, but like 99% of the content is in the game. And you can just buy it now, which I think is a great precedent. And I wish that it was the norm. I wish that it was expected. But it's also good to have some kind of a law in place to enforce that. Yeah, this does, it does. I guess you could still offer it as a download. You could still allow people to, I think you could still have a situation where you keep something up for purchase and download. But then, because if so many things are being run on the server, I guess it would have to change the package to like now you're downloading a bunch of way more assets. So it would be a kind of a different thing that you're buying or that you're downloading, but I think it's manageable. So I know that there have been some, let me look that up. Stop Killing Games criticism. There's been some pushback on this from like I know there was one Twitch streamer, his name is Pirate Software, who had a critique of I think some of the specific legislation. I didn't quite keep up with everything about what he said. If I can find a good, can I find a good summary of what he said? Oh boy, this is the magic of this podcast, is waiting for me to Google something. Okay. Licenses not lasting forever. Okay. I don't know if I'm gonna pause this to read this real quick. Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm back from reading that, and it kind of looks like he just didn't read the FAQ. Okay. All of his criticisms were things that were like directly addressed in the FAQ. It could be that some of the very specific wording of the potential legislation is not like perfect, which I guess would be a problem, but I think in general the initiative is pretty positive. I agree with it. It should not interfere with games that are actively being supported and ongoing, and it should only apply to things as they are reaching their end-of-life status. And it would be great if some kind of server software could be released or something like that, some kind of package for people to host stuff. Yeah, so my very long answer to that is yes, I care a lot about Stop Killing Games and the preservation of stuff. I mean, honestly, I think one of my favorite videos I've ever done is an older one I did on a game called Habitat, which was maybe the first online game? One of the first online games. Definitely one of the first online social games. And Habitat was on like dial-up on the Commodore 64, created by Lucasfilm Games before they were LucasArts. and that was a really interesting study into like almost it was essentially a social experiment about online worlds. And Habitat is playable today. I mean, no one's on it, but it's playable today via a private server that is hosted by the Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment, which I volunteered with a few years ago. So, yeah. Yes, I am pro that. Anyway, now that we've got 2 topics out of the way, I can talk about the real shit. I might be a little speedy because we have a lot of stuff to talk about. The first thing I want to mention, Kat and I went to an advanced screening of Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Fowl. So I think it's been established that Kat and I are very big Aardman animation fans, and we love the Wallace and Gromit shorts and everything that they've done. So we were very excited for this movie. I was really happy that they were bringing back. If you don't know, Vengeance Most Fowl brings back the villain from The Wrong Trousers, the evil penguin with the glove on its head that masquerades as a chicken, and it's his revenge story. So we really wanted to see it, if possible, in theaters, because this movie is part of their multi-film deal with Netflix, and I'm gonna be honest, the stuff that Aardman has been doing with Netflix is like been super good. It's like I think some of their best movies. They did Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon, which is a perfect film. They did Chicken Run 2, which I'm gonna be real, I liked it more than the original. And then they did Vengeance Most Fowl, which is great. If you like Wallace and Gromit, it is a fantastic feature-length Wallace and Gromit story. It really feels like they didn't have to make a lot of compromises. That's kind of what it felt like on these recent Netflix efforts. Kat was telling me that when they were doing a lot of other theatrical stuff before, especially when they were doing like CG stuff like that, their CG movies, they would have interference and notes from the American Hollywood studios that they had to work with that kind of like, I don't know, kind of forced them into certain... They had to make compromises, is what I'm saying. And a lot of times it came in the form of like certain voice actors that are celebrities and stuff like that have to be in it. I'm sure there's certain elements to it that I think that they were just trying to Americanize it, which is a crime because they're like, Aardman's like the most British animation studio ever. And I love that about them. They are unrepentantly British. So we wanted to know if there was a theatrical screening of it. And yes, there are. In select theaters around the US, they were playing it. They might still be. I don't know. The only one that was... There's like a couple in LA, and we're like, yeah, well, that's like a day's drive. So we found one tiny itty-bitty little theater in San Francisco that was showing it, and it had like 5 theater houses inside, and they sat maybe a dozen people each. So we had an intimate viewing of Wallace and Gromit. There was like 2 other people in the theater with us. One of them was a guy who took the love seats in the back that Kat wanted for us, but he took them, and that dude was he was having a ball. He was having the time of his life. He had like he laughed like a Wilhelm scream. He would go, ah, woo, woo. It was so funny. He made the movie even better. So I think it's been out on Netflix for a few days. And if you like it, if you like Wallace and Gromit at all or anything Aardman does, I would totally recommend it. It is a wonderful, beautifully animated, worthy of the name Very fun plot. A lot of good jokes. There's a cameo by Philomena Kunk, which Kat immediately recognized. And I thought that was very funny that she would, that's Philomena Kunk. And it's funny because her character looks like her. She's not a comedic character. She's just playing like a news reporter. But yeah, great. Would totally recommend it. Next up, we finished Arcane, the whole season, the whole series, and the second season and everything. And I liked it. I know some people had issues with it. I didn't relate to it. I haven't bothered to read what people's problems with it are because I don't care. I thought it was good. I really enjoyed. Okay. There's some nuances to this topic. So my favorite stuff, the most stuff I found most interesting was the stuff with Jace and Victor. That was in the first season and that was in this season. And all the places that they took it, I thought were really intriguing. And I liked a lot of the stuff they did with the hex tech. And I don't know, I really enjoyed the allegories that they made to real world technologies. I like this kind of aspect that they introduce where hex tech, after so much use, ends up kind of awakening like latent magic in the world around it, like in the environment around it, but it's like not shaped well, and it's almost like poisonous and like mutative. And I thought that was actually kind of cool because they've been using the shit for like 10 years, and it takes one person being like, hey, there's like a weird leaf on this tree, for them to be like, wait, what the fuck? And they have no idea what this technology is that is now so ingrained in their culture and their society and their economy. And I thought that was a really cool kind of parallel to how much shit has industrialized society given us that's like, dude, this is fucking awesome. And then 30 years later, it's like, whoa, oh, dude, we did not know. Actually, we knew that it would happen, but there were like private interest groups that were covering it up because they didn't want you to know about what it did to the environment. That's a very unique kind of horror. I wish there was more done with that. But it didn't bother me too much that it went, I get they're kind of setting up for like a big wide world thing and all that. And it kind of introduces an aspect to the world that's like, well, where would you go with that? Because Hextech is just a part of Piltover, you know? That's just a part of that location. And, okay, fine. I thought Victor was cool. I thought the way that the path that Victor went down was interesting, and how he went from... I really enjoyed his dynamic with Jace and the sort of terror that he looked at their own creations with, into him kind of embracing it. And it was I thought that was kind of cool how they completely flipped perspectives. Jace became the anti-Hextech because he saw a vision of all of the ruin and the nightmare, the worst possible nuclear scenario of the technology. And Victor ended up embracing it for kind of his original dream, which was to use it to help people, and becomes this sort of messianic figure. He rejects it a little bit at first when he kind of realizes that it's super dangerous. But once he kind of plugs into it and he sees that girl who got fucking dusted by it is like a spirit being and all that, he's like, wait, this shit's awesome. Everyone should do this. And he's like a fucking Jesus figure. They got Twink Jesus. Yeah, I found that stuff more interesting than like the Vi, Caitlyn, Jinx stuff, to be honest. Dudes rule. Dudes rock. I guess on that front, I did enjoy that. I really liked Echo, man. I really liked that. I thought it was crazy. I think my favorite episode of the whole show is, I think, episode 7 of season 2, which is the parallel universe thing. That I wanted like a whole movie based on that. That shit was so cool. I love like the realizations of the characters and the different worlds and what they're experiencing, and Jace's whole like 147 hours story of him climbing out of a ravine for half the episode and finding this like horrifying scene and all that. I thought it was so, it was I don't know, it really filled me with a sense of scale and a horror. I think when you're talking about, there's an aspect of, and I know this term is super overplayed now, but cosmic horror, kind of Lovecraftian horror, that it's that term is super overused and people apply it to anything with tentacles. But I think this does qualify for that. There is an uneasy sensation that they feel like they have honed this energy and this power into something that they can control and shape and yeah, control. And as they delve into it, they're discovering that like they are fucking with stuff that they can't even begin to understand. And they have now introduced it into every facet of their society, and they really don't know what that entails. Like, I almost wish that was like what the show was about, but no, it's got to be about lesbians. Yeah, Echo was cool. I liked his side story thing. I think the Snow Bunny mind control memes are really funny. Snow Bunny mind control. Snow Bunny mind control. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good show. I just generally liked all the characters and stuff like that. It seems pretty clear to me that they're setting up for the next part of the show to be set in Noxus, which I think is actually I think it's a good call. Noxus is an interesting region. It is often kind of simplified into the bad guy state, but there's more interesting stuff going on there, and there's enough characters from Noxus that provide some kind of nuance to their culture that, like, yeah, in general they are like the Empire is shitty and evil, but there's interesting aspects of conflict inside of it. And I think like most of the Black Rose characters are cool. They show up. That was my thing, is I was like, oh, this feels like a big setup for something else, because there's this whole storyline of Ambessa and Mel and her being like a secret in the closet wizard, unawakened mage, and she's talking to like a character who is credited as like spectral sorceress or something, and I was like, oh, this has to be LeBlanc. This is obviously LeBlanc. Like that's her deal. She's like an illusion sorceress deceiver who like shapeshifts and splits into two and stuff like that. She's like a Illuminati queen. That seemed pretty obvious where they were going. They released a cinematic for the new League of Legends season, which is called Welcome to Noxus. And I was like, okay. Oh, and they specifically they basically all but confirm it, because there's a scene with a redesigned LeBlanc and Vladimir. I think the Vladimir redesign's fine. Not super into the LeBlanc one personally, but he's literally, they're referencing what happened in Arcane, and I was like, okay, all right. Hey, speaking of things that happened in Arcane becoming canon to League, so if you just watch the show, you probably have like one idea of Victor. I think it's important to note that when Arcane was first being written, I'm pretty sure that they were allowed to do whatever they wanted. It was just based on League of Legends and like was not canonical for at least the first season. Now this is important because I think that as a writer, you can take the ideas for the characters and like, okay, I'm going to spin them off into something a little different. The most dramatic of those is easily Victor. In the original League lore, Victor's like a cyborg guy. He's like a tech priest from 40K. He wants to be a robot, but also he wants, his evil thing is that he wants to be everyone to be like a cyborg robot. And he's like a big imposing villain. He's like inspired by Doctor Doom. in Arcane, he turns into like magical Jesus prophet guy. Now, they decided after the success of, I think, the first season, or I think after the second season, they were like, yeah, Arcane's canon now. And I don't think that they communicated that to the Arcane team. So now they have to fit, League is such a fucking mess. They have to fit all of this new backstory into the existing world. And there is totally like probably dialogue and existing stuff that conflicts with that. It's probably a total mess. Now, most of the characters have been unchanged from their League incarnations. However, Victor is a completely different character. Now, if they wanted to make a skin for Victor that was based on that, I think that would be fine. That was based on Arcane, like they did Arcane skins for everyone else. I'd be fine with that. I think that's a cool looking design. It's a cool sort of idea for the character to make him magical based instead of technology, where most of his skins are mechanical. But they said no. They said because we are updating Victor's lore, base Victor is now Arcane Victor, and Machine Victor is completely out. So it's so weird because they took Victor's Arcane design. They said, this is now the base thing. He's a magical prophet guy. And then they reworked. So the thing is the model looks great. It's a really good looking model. Would have been perfect as a skin. But then they had to rework all of his they gave him a full visual overhaul. And all of his other skins now got updated to match the model and proportions of the base skin. And it like completely fucks them up. There are very few of them that I think look even on par with the original. Because Victor was designed to be like a big, broad-shouldered, armored-up cyborg guy who's like big and imposing and villainous. And then you look at what they did with all of his skins, and they twinkified all of them, and they look terrible. A lot of them look really weak and low impact, and like just oh my god, no, that's not what this look was not meant to be on a tiny, skinny little 100-pound Victorian boy. So every day I'm glad that I keep a distance from caring about League of Legends, that I keep it at an arm's length, because dear Lord, dear God, because I liked Victor. I liked Victor in the show a lot, and I thought it was kind of cool in game. I didn't mind that there was a discrepancy because in my mind it was all different, and then they said no. Well, Riot is Riot, the most poorly coordinated company of all time. Here's another funny thing. I think this is an interesting topic. There was an article that came out about how Arcane was not like a huge moneymaker for them. And honestly, I think part of that is their fault because they did not merchandise that show at all. Like the Kat was talking about it because she wanted to buy merchandise because she's a little consumer. But she just can't find any. Like, there's like a couple Hot Topics that have shirts that immediately sold out. There's like a couple Funko Pops. That's it. There's not like, they could be doing way more. Like that should be, you would think that would be their moneymaker thing, right? The other half of that article is that Arcane resulted in a spike in people signing up for League, but most of those people dropped off. And like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you liked Arcane, you probably liked it for the characters, and the story and the setting and, that kind of stuff. And then you go play League of Legends and the actual characters involved in Arcane make up 5% of the character roster. Most of the important lore actually lies in like three or four other regions, something like that, like Demacia, Noxus, Ionia, Shurima. Yeah, like those are the Freljord, I get. Zaun and Piltover are actually, in a grand scale, kind of the least important, some of the least important regions in terms of big earth-shaking events that happen in the timeline. It's like, yeah, Demacia, Noxus, Freljord, Shurima, Iona, like literally everyone else. So you try to play the game, and it's like, well, the game just has like nothing in common besides a couple characters. And there's people who are like, I want to play as you can play as those characters, but unless you genuinely like League of Legends gameplay, which is going to turn a lot of people off, and also the new player experience, I'm sure, is terrible these days. You're probably going to bounce off of it like a basketball on concrete. That was a good one. That was a good simile. So, where are you supposed to go if you like Arcane? Legends of Runeterra has some Zon and Piltover champions in it. And that game is like not supported beyond being a single player thing. And the fighting game 2XKO, which is going to release sometime this year, maybe, is going to have those characters. And there's a stage. That's the bridge from the first season. That's a great scene. And it's almost like Riot has this property, which is they have packed to the gills with storytelling potential, and it's all contained within a main product that is literally poison to storytelling. It has next to zero storytelling capabilities. It's a fucking multiplayer arena game. You can have a couple voice lines between characters. So I don't even think Summoner's Rift is a real place in Runeterra anymore. I don't think it exists. It's just like a League of Legends. When I describe League of Legends lore, have I said this before? I don't know. It's like a non-canon. It's like a non-canon crossover game that was made before any of the source material was created. Does that make sense? It's like if you had Marvel versus Capcom before Marvel or made any comics or Capcom made any other games. That's like what it is. And they don't have a game or product that really facilitates that you can go dive into. You know what would be perfect for that? That MMO they've been talking about that's never gonna fucking come out because they take 100 years with everything. Riot really does want to become the next Blizzard in terms of taking God so many years to make anything. The thing is like, you know, I heard about the Runeterra MMO, and I'm not gonna lie, I got excited. I'd be curious about checking it out. I still like that world. I still have a lot of affection for those characters. I think there's some cool parts to the universe. There's things that I would, you know, I'd like to check out. I want to meet Dr. Mundo. I want to meet Mundo. There is a ton of potential for that, to make a big, open, sprawling MMO with the fascinating world and tons of really unique, varied locations and cool characters and interesting ideas for classes and all sorts of PvE, PvP. There's so much potential there, and it's just not here. And oh my god, could you imagine if friggin' Arcane Season 2 came out and they had an MMO ready to go, and you could like, if that MMO comes out, you should be able to like choose like a starting region, right? You should be able to choose like a starting region from a couple, and like, I don't know how you would do that and like have it still be have like a sense of progression. You could probably figure something out. But like, could you imagine if you could pick Piltover or Zon as your character's starting location and make a character that fit into that? Maybe something like they did with Record of Ragnarok. Or no, Warhammer Ragnarok. Right? Is that what it was called? Warhammer Online. The MMO. Record of Ragnarok is the the Resurrection server, which you would play it on nowadays. Hey, speaking of stop killing games, yeah, they had a whole system in that game where in your character creation you would pick either the Order or Chaos factions, and then a race which belonged to them, and then the races had different access. The races had access to different classes. Some of them crossed over, but there were a couple unique ones per race. And then that would determine, I think your race determined your starting location, your starting region. Something like that could work, you know? I think that could be cool. Could you imagine if they had anything from Arcane there? Oh my god. And then when the season 2 comes out, it would be like, we got a big new, an expansion of content related to Arcane. What? Isn't that gonna be so cool? People would be signing up in droves. Are you kidding me? Especially if it was free to play, like all their shit. It would be crazy. But they don't. Anyway, I enjoyed Arcane. I would recommend it. I enjoyed pretty much every aspect of it, especially the lesbian sex scenes. I think Kat and I enjoyed them in different ways. Personally, I enjoyed it in like an intellectual way, and she enjoyed it in kind of like a lascivious, sort of perverse way. And I don't really agree with that on a fundamental level. We went and watched Sonic 3. Now, about a year or two ago, I talked about Sonic 2 and Knuckles. And in that segment, I don't think I was negative about the film. It was more just like, that was a movie that really was, it's not made for, like, it's like, it is a movie aimed at children, right? If you enjoy it as an adult, that's fine. But like, I think you have to acknowledge that like the dialogue and the plot is geared to be very understandable and digestible by children, which is perfectly fine. It's a Sonic the Hedgehog movie. It's just that like, it's not really geared towards me. It's not aimed at me as a now 23-year-old man. Stop asking me about it in the comments. So my girlfriend kind of dragged me to see Sonic 3. She was really excited for it. And I said, why not? It's got Shadow and something like Sonic Adventure 2. Maybe I don't know. We'll check it out. I do it for her. So we saw it with a bunch of our friends, and not gonna lie, I had a good time. I actually quite liked it. Did I quite like it, or did I just like it? I liked it. I can say that I had fun. Again, I don't like giving number scores to things, but I had a very fun experience with Sonic 3 in a way that I wasn't expecting. I was sort of expecting kind of like the last film. I didn't watch the first one. I don't think you need to. We saw it with a friend who literally hadn't seen any of them, and they had no problem watching this. So the main difference is that I would say Sonic 2 was kind of dumb in like a kid's movie way, and Sonic 3 was dumb in a Sonic way. And that's really important. With Sonic 2, it was like the characters would just sort of exposit exactly what they were feeling or thinking or what the message was supposed to be and what was happening. And it was like, I don't know, just it felt like it was trying to appeal to like kids who play Fortnite. Does that make sense? Like, we're gonna have a fucking dance sequence in the middle of it, and Sonic's gonna do the floss. Does he do that in that movie or the first one? I don't remember. That was the spirit. And, you know, as an adult, didn't really appeal to me. I'm also, again, not a huge Sonic fan. I don't have any particular animosity towards the series, but it's not something that massively appeals to me. So, yeah, I was kind of like lukewarm whatever on it. Sonic 3, it's still really silly, but it's silly in the way where Sonic Adventure 2 is silly, where it feels so it feels so earnest. It feels so earnest, and like it wants to tell a real serious story with like comedic Jim Carrey shit in there, right? Where he's doing silly, goofy stuff. And he's still enjoyable. He's probably the better part of like the previous movie, I thought, too. But also, like, Shadow is dead serious. And I think that's what the previous movie was missing. Shadow is like dead serious and angsty. And they do just enough to sell you on making his emotion feel legitimate that I was like, damn, this hedgehog is sad. And then in the moments where, okay, I think it really does, like, the climax of the movie is really good. I'm going to spoil it. There were things even earlier that I was like, pointing at the screen. They do recreate the shot of Shadow pulling back the fucking cocking a gun and getting on a motorcycle, which is awesome. His theme has the same melody as I Am All of Me, which is great. It's a great pull. You couldn't have done that like even 10 years ago, you know, because the stank of Shadow the Hedgehog, the game, was like so strong. People would not have liked it. Now there's sort of an ironic appreciation for it as it's just part of the series history. And, you know, people aren't as sore about that game anymore. And also Shadow the Hedgehog has a lot of really good music. I've used a bit of it in my videos. So that's great. They do have a scene where Sonic and Shadow both go super hedgehog mode and they fly into space towards a giant satellite laser cannon and they play Live and Learn. And I'll tell you right now, as someone who is not even a real Sonic fan by any real big metric, I did pop off in the theater. That was hype shit. That was good. They do cut it a little bit. I wish they'd let it play out a little longer to kind of soak it in. But they do like kind of abruptly cut to Jim Carrey shenanigans and then back to the Live and Learn with the song playing. And it's like they should have just kept it playing the whole time. Or I don't know. Maybe it looked better on the script, but it felt a little bit jerky. I wanted like a 2-3 minute sequence of that. Go through the song. Go through the song. Let them fight it out in space. I will say we saw this with two history majors. And there's a scene where Sonic and Shadow are fighting and they crash into the Pantheon, like a famous ruin of Greece. Not the Parthenon, but the Pantheon. And like a pillar gets a little damaged. And I heard both of them go, and they were like, as they were fighting, I watched both of them in the theater next to me, like tense up. And then like the whole thing gets destroyed and they were like, no, I'm like, guys, it's not real. They didn't really do that. It's CGI. Yeah, this was the one, like, I felt like in Sonic 2, I felt a little bored. I wasn't very engaged. In this one, I was consistently entertained. It has a very driving plot, and a lot of the little twists that it takes personally worked for me and made the story more interesting. It felt like they were continuously upping the stakes, and I really liked the conflict that Shadow had with Sonic. They put in some real energy to make Shadow have a tragic backstory, and you're like, damn, he really did care about this little blonde girl who does. Okay, here's the other thing. I did not know if they were going to shoot her. Obviously, she gets shot in the original game. So crazy to say out loud. And there's a scene where they're trying to escape, and there's a bunch of gun soldiers pointing rifles at them. And It was so funny. Everyone around me leaned forward with like their hands clasped up to their mouths. Like everyone was like, are they gonna do it? Are they gonna do it? They don't shoot her. What happens is there's like a misfire and they shoot like a chemical chaos vat and that explodes, and the explosion, like the impact, kills her. So, yeah, okay, fine. I'll give that to you. They do show a dead kid on screen, which is like, damn, okay. They were willing to be a little bit more, it felt a little bit edgier. Just enough, you know, to fit the weird ass, inconsistent Sonic the Hedgehog tone that they have, where it's like Sonic Adventure 2. Whoa! And then Eggman's like pointing a pistol at Amy's head. He's gonna fucking kill her. He's gonna fucking execute her. Jesus. Oh Lord. But yeah, Sonic 3. People said it was the best of the trilogy. I haven't seen the original, the first one, but I can totally believe that. I actually liked it. And it had a fun stinger. I'll spoil the after credits scene. Sonic runs too fast in like a foot race. He ends up in the woods in like New York, and he gets attacked by Metal Sonic. And I was like, what? That's fun. Because you're thinking like, I remember at the end of the last one, I was thinking like, okay, what else? Wait, okay, so now we've done Knuckles. What's like the next thing they would do? And I was thinking, Metal Sonic? Yeah, is that strong enough for a whole movie? And then I was like, oh no, obviously Shadow. Shadow's the next big thing that you do. Like, that's the character you base the next movie around. And I remember saying that to Kat, and she was like, they're not going to do Shadow. And then the fucking post-credit scene with Shadow came on, and I was like, I told you, idiot. And I was wondering, like, what would you do next? Would you do Black Doom? Because there's a first post-credits scene that reveals Shadow's alive. And I was like, oh, are they going to do the fucking Shadow the Hedgehog storyline? Are we going to get a cinematic version of Shadow saying, disgusting black creature? Please clip that out of context and post it everywhere. Please tell me we're going to get Black Doom. No, it's Metal Sonic, but there's like a whole bunch of them. And also Amy showed up, and Kat was so excited. She loves Amy. She loves Amy Rose. Amy showed up, and she was like bouncing up and down in her seat next to me. She was so giddy with excitement. It was very cute. So they're going to probably do some kind of like something like that. Here's my crazy theory. I think they're going to do like robots from the future, because Sonic CD is like the time travel one. They're going to do robots from the future, and they're coming to attack Sonic, and Amy's coming to help him because she knows that like I don't know, for some reason, it's going to be like a misunderstanding. And you know who's going to be sending them? Silver is going to be Silver, and they're going to do Sonic 06. They're going to do Sonic 06 where they're like, we have to destroy Sonic is the Iblis trigger. That would be so fucking epic. Oh, and then they fight Mephiles at the end. I was like, because we were like, what other villains does the series have? And I was like, Black Doom, I guess, but that's like a Shadow specific one. There's those like Sinister Seven or whatever they're called from Lost World. There's, what's his name? Infinite or something from, what's he from? He's from Forces? Who's the villain in Frontier? I don't know dick about newer Sonic games. And in my mind, I'm like, Mephiles? Dude, Mephiles is such a fucking 2005 design, right? It's like, we'll take Sonic and Shadow, but he's gonna be all black, and he's gonna be like made of crystal. He's gonna be like dark black crystal with glowing purple eyes. Oh my god. You could never do that character now. That's such a 2005 design. I love it. Please let it be Mephiles. Please do Sonic 06 as the next one. Skip here. Oh, there's a funny Sonic Heroes reference for like 1 second. There's a moment where the main trio are falling, and Tails picks up Sonic and Shadow, and they hang off of him the exact same way that they do in Sonic Heroes, which I thought was fun. Little nod. Yeah. So you do Chaotix. They should do a spin-off with the Chaotix. That should have been what the Knuckles spin-off was. Do a spin-off with him, like, having to like interact with the Chaotix, who are like these goobers, and then Knuckles is like a stone cold warrior. That'd be fun. Bring back Mighty the Armadillo. That's who he is, right? He looks nothing like an armadillo. Or is he an anteater? I don't remember. He's an armadillo. Yeah. I'm hoping that it's some combination of Sonic CD and Sonic 06. That would go so... I want to see that shit. Oh, you're adapting Sonic 2? Fine. Well, how much plot does that game even have? Sonic 06? Oh, shit. I kept thinking in this movie, Shadow does this move where he teleports behind people and kicks them, and I just kept thinking of the fucking shot from Sonic 06 where Shadow and Silver are fighting, and Shadow teleports behind him and just kicks him, and it's the funniest thing ever. It looks like a fucking Gmod animation. Silver is cool, and he suffers from like a little bit of Axel syndrome, like from Mega Man X, where his first game sucks and his gameplay is not great in it. Axel's is just boring because it's just like auto targeting. But Silver's like, they're like, oh cool, it's like a psychic character. Let's have him do terrible physics puzzles. That, and we'll have the first time you run into him, it's no use. It's no use. Like, such a terrible introduction to that character. Oh, they gotta do Blaze the Cat. Make it a two-parter. Make it a big-ass two-parter. Put in Blaze the Cat and Amy and Silver, and the whole Sonic CD thing is just completely fake. It's just a total it's just a total what would you call bait and switch? Oh, I would love that. Speaking of things that I love, on my birthday, Kat took me out to a special occasion, a movie I've been wanting to see for a while. You could even say that I've been craving it. We went to go see KRAVEN at like fucking 10:30 at night. So, in the freezing cold. So, KRAVEN, the sixth, technically? Yeah, because if you count the Venom movies, film in Sony's Spider-Man-less Spider-Man spin-off villain series, The Disappearance of Peter Parker. So this is kind of like a follow-up. The only reason I was interested at all in seeing this, and the entire interest was ironic, I just thought it was hilarious to say, I'm craving it for like 3 months, was because we watched Madam Web on Netflix a while ago. And if you remember, that movie goes so hard. I think I would love to rewatch that film. Madam Web is like a modern classic of great bad movies. It is so poorly executed, it is almost incomprehensible. I think I described that film as one where every single thing was a little bit off. Every aspect of filmmaking. Like the lighting, the shot composition, the editing especially, the pacing, the way the plot beats went, the characterization, the performances, the line reads, the music, everything was just slightly off to the point where if it was one or two things, it wouldn't be that bad. But because it's absolutely everything, the film feels so awkward, and it feels like an accident. It feels like an hour and a half long accident. go check out Smiling Webs on my side channel on the Cellar Plus R, which was a stupid meme that I made, taking scenes from Madam Web and putting them to clips, setting them to audio from Smiling Friends. I lost subscribers on that channel when I uploaded that. They did not like Smiling Webs. I love that video. Right, so because Madam Web was so funny, I was like, I want to see Kraven so bad, right? It has to be funny too, right? So we went to go see it, and I'm sorry to say, Kraven is just kind of regular bad. It's just a regular bad movie. It's 2 hours long because it is poorly constructed. So the main issue with the film is that it starts 3 times, which actually gives it a lot in common with Pulp Fiction, another movie that starts 3 times. But it doesn't even have like the kind of fun dialogue or good scenes that movie does. And I don't even like Pulp Fiction very much. So Kraven is so weird because, so here's the way the movie goes. You start with a 10-minute cold open depicting Kraven like killing someone in a Russian prison and then escaping. You get title card, then you flash back like 15 years to Kraven as a boy being with his half-brother Dimitri and their evil drug lord father Russell Crowe. And they like go to a safari, and Kraven gets fucking, his name isn't Kraven, it's Sergey, I think. He gets like mauled by a lion, which is hilarious. And then they have like a whole scene to set up, a whole scene in a completely different part of the country. They're in Ghana to set up Calypso. And then Calypso as a girl finds him and gives him a magic potion that her grandmother gave her. She calls it's a magic potion. And I was joking that like in my head, I was like, what, it restores 10 HP. And then she says it heals people in mysterious ways, which was hilarious. So she gives him this potion after he's been mauled. And the potion lets him pull through the injuries, and he awakens with like animal powers. So he's kind of just like superhuman, where he's above average, like above human strength and speed and agility and like senses and stuff like that. And but it usually manifests in him like crawling around like a little kitty. So he's got furry powers essentially. So that whole so Kraven gets these powers and he's like, my dad sucks, and then he leaves home to go back to like, where are they, Russia, like Eastern Russia, and then that's like a 30-minute segment, and then the movie starts again in the modern day 15 years later with him going to, I think, London to visit his brother for his birthday. So about 40 minutes of the film is spent on setup. You could call it a slow burn. It genuinely is like 40 minutes of prelude. And then, because it takes another 20 minutes until he gets an actual, what you could call a call to action, if you want to follow like a 3-act structure kind of, if you want to wrangle this monster of a script into a 3-act structure. Let's call that the call to action, which is that his brother gets kidnapped by a guy who's trying to extort their father. And that's when Kraven's like, I gotta find my brother and rescue him. So that's genuinely, the main character does not have the motivation to drive the plot of the film until an hour in. So the first hour is really boring. It is mostly just scenes happening with very little forward momentum, very little purpose. Like, things are happening, but you don't really have a sense of where it's going or why or how we're gonna get around there, and the specific things going on aren't so interesting that it makes up for it. Kat was genuinely almost falling asleep in the theater, only to be occasionally awoken because she thought it was really funny when how certain lines were read. There's a good one where Russell Crowe shows teenage Craven the head of the lion that almost killed him, and Sergei's like, he should have killed you. It's awesome. So the rest of the movie is like an actual film that is okay. It's like a perfectly okay action movie. It has bad dialogue. It has kind of classic bad movie dialogue where half of the lines are exposition and the other half are really bad metaphors that are trying to sound cool and complex. So half the dialogue will be like, this is this guy, he was born here and he does this for a living and that's why he's after you. That's like half of it. The other half is, well, you know, the lion that stalks the jungle is the one that tries not to come fast. And then another character says, but you don't understand that the hunter is the one who actually comes first in the try not to come challenge. That's the other half of the dialogue. It's just characters talking like that in like mixed animal metaphors. And it's very lame. There is a little bit of something to this script. If you peel away all of the boring, tacky nonsense, there's a little bit of heart. There's like one scene where Craven and his brother are talking before their father arrives at like the dinner that they're having, and they're talking, and there's this kind of tense, there's this dynamic between them where Craven feels bad because he left his brother, who is Craven was like the 100% own son, right? He was the one who he was older. He's not a bastard child. He was meant to inherit the business, the drug business from Russell Crowe. And then he completely turns against his father, goes to be like a furry wild man in the woods. And now Dimitri has grown up, and he's not like a ruthless drug kingpin. He doesn't have the makings of that. He's like a sensitive musician. He wants to open a club. He wants to sing music. He wants to perform on his piano. And that's his deal. He's a more sensitive soul. And Craven has this kind of conflict where he recognizes that his father was evil and he needed to run away from him. But also he feels bad about abandoning his brother to grow up with their horrible father. And and Dimitri is like, no, it's fine. And Dimitri, in fact, they're having this conversation and he says that he wants to be more like their father. He wants to be more ruthless. He wants to be stronger, as he says. Like this idea of strength that their father has tried to ingrain in him. And Craven is kind of seeing his father's influence worm its way, like kind of wear down Dimitri over years and years of pressure to become a horrible criminal, right? And he's kind of seeing what maybe the actions that he's done have led to this, that he wasn't there to protect his older brother or to guide him, to be a positive force. And there's a little bit of kind of an interesting conflict. They go home that night, and Craven, Dimitri's super drunk. Craven puts him to bed, and Dimitri says, like, I don't hold anything against you. I would forgive you for anything. And I was like, this is like a little bit interesting. There's like genuinely a bit of an interesting family dynamic going on. And I think the relationship between the two brothers and the performances between them and the conversations were kind of compelling. That's like the only scene of them doing that. There's one scene that has potential of them talking at dinner where you're like, hang on, I almost want to see where their relationship goes. I would almost want to see, I want to see the plot do something with that. And then nothing happens because Dimitri gets kidnapped, and then Kraven spends the rest of the movie trying to save him from the rhino. Oh, the rhino's in this movie. Always so funny. The rhino's so awesome. So the rhino gets introduced in that flashback sequence where they're out hunting, and he's part of the hunting group, and he's like a kind of nerdy guy, and he's talking to Russell Crowe, and he's like, I want to be your partner. And Russell Crowe's like, you don't mean fucking shit to me, you're a little fucking beta cock male. And the guy's like, oh, okay, oh god, okay. And now he's grown up, or he's older, and now he's his own criminal lord of something. Do they mention like weapons? Something like that? I have no idea. Drug trade? I don't know. And he wears like a collared shirt and khakis, and he wears it's like a medium shirt that like grips onto his body super tight, and he's wearing a super tiny backpack that looks really funny. He looks like he's wearing clothes that are a size too small for him. He looks like a little boy. He's dressed like a little boy. And this backpack has a tube that goes to a little socket in his side. And when he unplugs the tube, he starts rhinoing out, and his skin gets all gray and hardening, and it's like kind of painful for him, but it like massively increases his strength and durability and all that. And he's like, I saw a doctor in New York who he did this experiment on me, and my skin became hard like a rhino. And then he's like, I always charge head first into everything like a rhino. And he's like totally into this whole idea of like symbolically he is like a rhino, and he's taken after that animal as his fursona. And then in the final action scene of the movie, he goes full transformation, and it turns out that in addition to him like symbolically being like a rhino, he also just has a fucking giant horn coming out of his head. It's so funny. It's the best part of the movie. It's the best part of the movie. Because, like, it's like, oh, it's like he goes through all this mixed metaphor bullshit about why he's a rhino. And then, oh, also, yeah. I have a giant horn coming out of my head when I go full transformation. Why? I don't know. There's an awesome shot where he goes, KRAVEN! That we laughed at. That kind of ruled. And then KRAVEN kills him, and then, oh, okay. There's an awesome, shitty stinger to end the movie. So Dimitri, they introduced like during the flashback segment that he's really good at imitating people. He does like a perfect imitation of their dad. And he's like, and then he's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think they say. And then later when he gets kidnapped, he imitates the rhino guy, and he says, yeah, I'm like a chameleon. And then in the final scene, Sergei meets up with Dimitri, and Dimitri has this kind of different vibe to him, and he's like, I've decided that I'm going to become strong like our father, and I'm going to become a super criminal mastermind like him, because that's how you get what you want in this world. I'm done being a little beta cuck. And he's like, I've always been, you know me, I've always been a chameleon. And then he turns around, and he literally turns into a fucking CGI lizard man. It's so good. It's so good. Where the fucking writer just can't help himself. Where he's like, yeah, so like symbolically Dimitri he's like a duplicitous shapeshifter. Also, he's an actual chameleon. It's so good. It's so good. You know, I'm surprised. Again, like little scripts, like, come on, man. They never do anything with the impressions. I totally thought there was going to be a scene because he does it 2 or 3 times where he does a perfect impression of somebody's voice. They never do a scene where he like calls someone up and pretends to be the rhino to get something. Like that would make sense. That would even be an even better setup if you want to turn him into a villain, to be like, oh, this is like this whole experience of being a captive and having to, he doesn't have a lot of strength and he doesn't have a lot of power, but he uses his wit and cunning and this unique skill of his to fool people. He's misleading and tricky. And that gives him a kind of taste for, it gives him a kind of killer edge that's different to like a hunter like KRAVEN. But they never do anything with that for some reason. Instead, he's literally just like a captive the whole movie. He's just like a little princess who needs to be rescued. Yeah, KRAVEN is not a good film. It could probably be improved massively by just restructuring where certain things happened. It's clear, like I can see where the writer is coming from, where in his head it was maybe like, okay, well, we have to explain the origin story, and the origin story happens when he's a kid, and when he's a kid, but then we have to get into all this stuff that happened when he was young, and then it's like, well, now you've just strapped a ton of bullshit onto the story that bogs it down, and there's just giant weights onto an otherwise fine action film. Like, I didn't even mention it, but the action scenes are fine. They're kind of fun. It's kind of fun to watch, what's his name, Aaron Taylor Johnson do like crazy super Olympian stunts and stuff like that, where he's parkouring around buildings and hanging onto cars, and he's sprinting super fast. You know, it's not quite like a super exaggerated super heroics type of thing, but it's kind of fun. It's like a fun sort of vibe to have for an action hero, to just be like at that level, and he's still, you know, capable of getting wounded and all that stuff, and it's fine. The action scenes are probably the only entertaining parts of the film. They're kind of, in that they're like kind of, something's happening on screen. Anyway, oh, I forgot to mention the the foreigner, a character who I had never heard of that I looked up that they completely changed. He's just like a super assassin in the original comics, but in this movie they made him, he can like stop time when he takes his glasses off. And the effect when he does it is so funny, because he takes them off, he goes 1, 2, 3, and then like he makes someone shoot themselves by turning their gun around or something. It's just, dude, again, like it's structured so poorly that it's like they have to keep, I'm like, dude, we're like a fucking hour and 20 minutes in and they're still setting up villains. It's insane. Oh, it's so, yeah. Unfortunately, an end to the Sony Spider-Verse. What are they going to do after this? I have no idea. There was a hilarious interview with like their CEO where he was like, people just don't like it because they hate us because they ain't us. Which is like an incredible confirmation that these people have no idea what good art is. They have the worst taste imaginable. Yeah. So would I recommend KRAVEN? No. Would I recommend Madam Web? Hell yeah. If you love watching bad movies that are really funny like I do, and I think especially if you have any knowledge of any kind of filmmaking at all, if you've done editing or you're just into film, oh my god, it's a disaster piece. Finally, we're gonna talk about video games. So on my birthday, I always do a countdown stream because it's New Year's Eve. So we always do a countdown stream leading up to my birthday. Well, it's New Year's Day. We stream on New Year's Eve. And this year I decided to follow up. I thought it'd be fun if we followed up on a game we played last year. That being Class of '09. It doesn't feel like that long ago that we played it, but yes, it was a whole year. I think Kat vaguely knew what it was when we played the original. I kind of knew a little more, but we went into it largely blind, and we both ended up really enjoying it and thinking that it was really funny and had some kind of interesting commentary, and we had a good time. It surprised us in a good way, and I think we ended up getting all the endings. So Class of '09, the re-up, is the follow-up to the original. It is not a sequel. It's like a mid-quel. It's kind of just like, it takes place during the junior and senior years of the original, and it's just sort of more stories that happen during that point, during that period. And in some, okay, I'm going to be honest, we didn't finish the game, mainly because Kat was really not feeling it. So it is different, because on the surface you might think, oh, well, this is like the same thing, right? Not exactly. So the first game had 13 different endings and like one true ending. So 14 endings total. The re-up has 7 different endings with one true ending. So about 8 total, let's say. And it's about the same length as the original. So the individual storylines in the re-up are much longer. And that's where I think people are going to have problems with it. If you don't care much for visual novels, where you're just reading and watching a story unfold without too much choice happening, if you have a problem with that, you are really not going to be down. You're going to be very bored. You're not going to be into it. Personally, I've played a couple visual novels before, so I'm not like, I've watched like people play through them before, and I'm not opposed to it, and I personally was fine with just hunkering down and kind of watching the story progress. Didn't make for quite as good stream content, I don't think, because there's just not as much to, like, the making the choices was a very fun part of the original, and in this one there's just less choices because there's less branching paths. You're getting a choice once every, again, like 10 minutes or something. You're going a long time. So when you buy this game, you should know that it's more like, if you're not used to VNs, it's more like you're buying 7 episodes of the Class of '09 show presented via sliding PNGs. Some people might be okay with that. Some people might think that's lame. I think personally that like the actual stories are pretty funny or have like good potential. Again, we didn't see all of them. Like there's one where Nicole has to do charity service hours, but she's lazy and she kind of forgot to sign up for some kind of a nonprofit group or something like that. So she makes up her own I think it's called Medicine Rocks. And all she does is, there's a guy at her school who dropped like a pound of cocaine, of like crack cocaine. And she just goes to the ghetto and starts selling crack to people, and for like super low prices. And they think she's a fed until she like establishes herself in the scene. And the only thing that she asks for, beyond the low prices, is that they sign off on her service hours sheet, which is a really funny concept. And then it turns out that like one of her customers ends up being the teacher for the class that is making her do these service hours. And he gets mad at her because she's faking her service hours. And she's like, dude, you're more angry about that than the fact I'm selling crack. And then there's like a police shootout, and it's pretty funny. It's like a good storyline. There's one where Nicole, like this girl comes out to her as a lesbian, and Nicole enters into an abusive relationship with her, where obviously Nicole is the abuser, like an emotionally abusive relationship. And then the girl has to like discover what an abuse, the different forms that abuse can take. I'm saying this like it's funny, but like it sounds it's obviously, that's the other thing. So with Class of '09, what you're getting into is that these characters are fucking awful people, and Nicole is like the worst person. The main character is a terrible, terrible person. That's like front loaded into the game. It's like the first thing she tells you. There's a fucking storyline in the original where you join the White Power Club, and she is part of a fucking racist terrorist attack where they blow up Puerto Rican bingo night. There's shit like that, you know? She's a terrible person. And depending on your tolerance for that, again, that's another make or break thing. Like, if you just hate, well, even in like the aspect of a comedy where she's always presented as being fucked up, if you just hate that, that's another breaking point for you. So not something that's for everyone. I haven't gone back and actually finished it yet. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm kind of curious what the rest of it has. But yeah, it's a take it or leave it thing. I can see it being a little bit polarizing. If you really enjoyed the writing style of the original and the kinds of insane satirical storylines and this kind of parody of this kind of over-the-top parody of 2000s American culture, specifically like high school culture, which again is like a very specific thing, then you might very well like it. If the fact that you were making a bunch of choices was more interesting to you, then yeah, this might not have as much for you. So that's my recommendation. I'm not personally opposed to it. Again, I haven't played the rest. I think that the original really kind of I really gained an appreciation for it when I finished it. And I think it had some actually pretty interesting things to say. All in all, like when you see all the different permutations of these characters and these plot lines, it had some kind of interesting things to say about people feeling rejected from social groups and how they respond to that. And how, like, for instance, someone becomes like an incel, and the kind of the how someone falls into like supremacist groups and stuff like that. There was like parallels between Nicole and Jeffrey, Jeffrey's always like a weird creep, but then there's ways in which they're kind of both similar and they kind of respond to their environments in similar ways, but they consider themselves to be completely different. And that's sort of, and both of them sort of fail to even see that irony. And I thought that was kind of an interesting commentary about the way that those sorts of traits can arise in people without them even knowing it, or how they can be hypocritical. Like, I thought the original had some really interesting stuff underneath all the crazy, incredibly offensive, crass humor. And school shootings and drug addiction and getting a guy to jump off a building. I forgot how much shit was in that first game. That's Class of '09, the re-up. And finally, a little game that I finished called The Legend of Grimrock. So I mentioned that after Wizardry 8, I've been on a bit of a blobber fever. Blobbers, for those who don't remember, are party-based first-person RPGs. Very often they are dungeon crawlers. Oftentimes tile-based, not always, but that's the idea. Specifically party-based first-person. That's like, in those party-based first-person RPGs. That's like the core of what that means. And I was looking around for anything that was even kind of like, okay, Wizardry 8 has like fucked me up for life, because I'm going to go forever being like, damn, I just wish there was another game with that combat system. I just wish there was another game that played like this. And I'm never going to get it again. I know I'm not. The Legend of Grimrock is a blobber from 2011 to 2012, I think. That is a much more traditional fantasy, kind of dark medieval fantasy type. It is a dungeon crawler. And I remember, at the time it released, it was a bit of a throwback. It's not a genre that gets too many entries. It's not one that has too many big, loud champions for it on the internet, the same way that, say, boomer shooters might. But I liked this game. This game is cool. It's got, again, some aspects that could be a little polarizing for people. I think the most important thing is the combat system. So essentially, you form a party of up to 4 characters who are all these prisoners who are thrown into this gigantic prison, this dungeon that is within a big mountain called Grimrock. There's no way out. So all you can do is venture down in the hopes of maybe finding maybe an underground passage that escapes it or something. So you're going down and down and down and down. I think there's like 13 different levels. And each level has different puzzles and traps and enemies and stuff and items to find. You pick up torches with limited durations. You gotta keep your characters fed. You create a party of up to 4 characters. I don't know if there's any reason besides self-imposed difficulty why you'd want to take less than 4, because I don't think the game really penalizes you by like splitting experience. But that's the setup. So it's a tile-based, really grid-based movement where you're going one square at a time in first person through this dungeon. It has a very minimal UI. At the bottom right corner is the portraits for all of your characters, and then underneath them is the health and stamina / mana bar. And the little squares below the portraits for what their left and right hands are carrying. So I was a little confused about how the combat works because the game never actually explains it to you. I think that's kind of a failure of the game. It has a tutorial, like a tutorial slideshow that you can click on in the menu, and it never tells you how the combat works. It's really weird. You just have to figure it out on your own because it's really unique. Essentially, what you do is that all of the combat takes place in real time. When you want to attack with a weapon, let's say you have a fighter who's equipped with a sword. You have to right-click on the sword that's below their portrait. So you have to right-click on the item that your character is holding that you want to use, and then they will swing the sword. And there's a little bit of a cooldown time that kind of think varies with like probably speed or dexterity. Dexterity is the stat. So something like that. Different weapons, I think, have different cooldown periods. I'm sure it's a variety of factors. That's how it works. So at first, this was a very weird system because you are doing a bunch of semi-precision clicking in real time, trying to manage all of your character's cooldowns and consistently attack with them. I've seen people who hate this combat system and they find it very awkward. I see where they're coming from. Personally, I don't know if I'd say I love it, but I definitely acclimated to it. And I think it has something, there is a cool aspect to it. I'll admit that. So, for instance, I think the most interesting part of the combat is that is the way that magic works. So there's only 3 classes in the game. It's a very pared down, very, I would say, small scale example of this genre. There's only 3 classes. There's like 4 races. And the classes are fighter, mage, and rogue, or like thief or something. It's that kind of a class, right? Mages are the only ones with access to spells. The way that mages work is that once you have them equipped with a staff or a wand or some kind of magical casting implement, you right click on their staff, right? And the way you cast spells is that their whole portrait, the whole square, turns into like a keyboard of runes, a set of runes, and then you have to select different runes. It's like a, what is it? It's like a 3x3 grid. You select different runes and then click on a little icon on the right to cast a spell corresponding to those runes. And you pick up scrolls that tell you what combinations do what spells. And then your level in various magical spell schools dictates what spells you're able to, like the level of spells you're able to cast. It's like air, fire, earth, and water, I think, or ice. Yeah. So that's really weird. And at first it's kind of intimidating. They start you out simple. It's like, do the top right one, or the top left rune. That does your fire burst attack. It's like a fireball that just hits directly in front of you. And then it's like, okay, top left, top right, middle right casts like a moving fireball. Bottom left, bottom right casts a field of ice spikes that extends in front of you like 3 or 4 tiles. And it's stressful, but it's very analog in a way that I think is cool. Like you have to actually take time. Spells are really strong in this game, but there is a cast time to them that is input based. It is an actual mechanical test of like how fast you can put in the spell and if you can remember them on the fly without having to reference them in the scroll that you're carrying. Because that's the only place where it'll be recorded. So you're in these fights, and I'm managing like my two. I had 2 fighters, a mage and a thief. I'm swinging with my fighters. I'm throwing things. I'm throwing objects with my thief, and then as my mage is coming off cooldown, I'm like, oh shit, and I have to plug in the proper combination for them to do this big, strong magical attack. And I don't know. There's something really cool about feeling like you are actively casting a magic spell that takes you a second to fully recite or dial in, and then you get some kind of reward for it. And then you fuck up the sequence, and the spell fizzles because you didn't put in a valid one. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. The combat against stronger enemies sort of devolves into this pattern where you go up to them, you hit them with 1 or 2 characters, and then you strafe around them because they can, enemies can only attack in one direction. So you just sort of strafe into their blind spots and then just do it again. There's a lot of enemies whose AI will behave in this way where you hit them, you strafe to the right, they move to the right to follow you, and then you hit them as they're still getting into position, and then you strafe to the left, and you just do that over and over again. Some people might find that a little bit boring, and the combat might be a little bit rote, especially near the end of the game where they start throwing, Christ, like so many high health enemies at you in a room or in one level. There's also a couple rooms that I audibly out loud said to myself, this room sucks. And that's kind of part of the genre, right? Like there are some puzzles that I just would not have figured out if I didn't look up a guide because they were not intuitive to me personally. And they were just like, hey, here's a new concept. It's that kind of game. It's that kind of game. That's something I've sort of just accepted with the genre. You might find that annoying. It's also like a fairly... How long is this game? I feel like I put... 23 hours. Yeah. Yeah, 20... It's like a solidly long game that I got a little tired near the end just because... I'm glad that it ended when it did because the final couple levels are very long and yeah, I just kind of got a bit of fatigue. The ending's fine. The ending's kind of neat. It turns out that like the final boss is very funny because it's easily the most dangerous thing in the game, but I don't even want to spoil it, but the way that it's dangerous is sort of hilarious and very specific to the way that the game's movement works. Legend of Grimrock. I give it a thumbs up. I would recommend. I would say it's a pretty cool game. I know there's a sequel. I haven't played the sequel yet. I would be interested in checking that out as well. And I think with that, my throat is very tired. And I'm going to draw this to a close. So, if you've been listening this far, thank you for listening to me ramble. If you have a question, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. If you are thinking of buying a product from Brookstone, don't, because they are actual scam artists. And they link you to medical device scams. If you are curious, what do I say in this outro? It's been so long, I'm so rusty. Check out my main channel. I put out a video on Mega Man 6, fun little video. I'm going to be back into producing videos in the next couple days at the very least, maybe tomorrow, just because I've been enjoying a little bit of vacation. It's my birthday, New Year. I felt like taking some time off, slightly longer than I usually do. So, yeah, I have a good idea. I'm kind of bouncing between one or two ideas for what the next video is going to be. One of them is very light and silly, and the other one is very dramatic. I don't know which one is going to speak to me more, but yeah. Do I have anything else to say? Check out my Patreon, and I have a coffee that you can also support me on. Links in the bottom. Bye.